And happy Monday, everyone. And we begin tonight with what I think is the question. When you are in the midst of a crisis, and specifically a crisis of democracy, how do you resist? When fascism isn't just coming, it's already here. So what, if anything, can you do about it? Well, for one thing, you can try to learn from history, from what people in this situation in countries around the world and in America have done before. As my friend Rachel Maddow always says, history is here to help. America hasn't always been a free country for everyone, and we've had resistance movements from day one. From enslaved people fighting their captivity. Shout out to Harriet Tubman, who was a 92%er before 92%ing was cool. And even taking up arms during the Civil War. To the women's movement and the workers' rights movement and the Stonewall gay rights movement. They've all been versions of the fight to make this a free country for everyone and to have a true multiracial democracy. And that is history's most important lesson, right? That the most important thing, the first rule, is to fight back, to never stop resisting. Do not obey in advance, as Tim Snyder put it. Do not take the knee, to throw in a Game of Thrones reference. Even if it's scary or uncomfortable or inconvenient, just keep saying no, or finding creative ways to say no in small ways and large. Medgar Evers said, do not shop where they will not employ you. Dr. King championed the Montgomery bus boycotts to become the leader of the civil rights movement. The labor rights movement shut down factories and hobbled industries to win the 40-hour work week that you enjoy right now, and more recently to ensure the right of workers to work from home during COVID. People have marched against the Vietnam War and the war in Iraq and against the decimation of Gaza using our tax dollars. You don't always win every battle, but the whole thing is about resisting. Last week, federal employees received an Orwellian email from the Office of Personnel Management, the government's HR department, following a tweet from their apparent real boss, the world's richest billionaire Elon Musk, head of the fictional and Orwellian Department of Government Efficiency, stating that, consistent with President Trump's instructions, all federal employees will shortly receive an email requesting to understand what they got done last week. Failure to respond will be taken as a resignation. The email that followed literally had the same subject line. What did you do last week? And came from the Office of Personnel Management's new HR email address, but had no signature. Here's the full email. Please reply to this email with approximately 5 bullets of what you accomplished last week and CC your manager. Please do not send any classified information, links, or attachments. Deadline is this Monday at 11:59 p.m. EST. The Saturday email kicked off a flurry of, shall we say, varied responses from the various podcasters, reality show hosts, and semi-famous people who run the agencies in our trumped-out federal government. Some, including Kash Patel, who alarmingly enough runs the FBI, told their employees to hold off, given that, per his email, the FBI, through the Office of the Director, is in charge of all our review processes and will conduct reviews in accordance with FBI procedures. When and if further information is required, we will coordinate the responses. For now, please pause any responses. Others, like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., emailed his department that the OPM email was legitimate and instructed them to read and respond per the instructions by the Monday evening deadline. However, per Sam Stein of the Bulwark, one agency under HHS took the opposite stance. Matthew Memoli, the acting director of the National Institutes of Health, emailed his team to tell them to please hold on responding until receive further guidance. Sam Stein is also reporting that HHS is backtracking on the Elon email and saying not to respond. Employees at the Department of Justice and Department of Defense are also being told not to respond. And you thought your HR department was chaotic. In short, nobody really knows what to do. Just the usual Trump world reality show chaos. But the email presented Americans with one of the other really perfect responses to fascism: ridicule. Journalist Allison Gill from a Substack called The Breakdown posted some of the best fictional responses that appeared online in response to the question, what would you really like to say in your response? Some of the best included: Number 1, kept refreshing email to see if I was fired or placed on administrative leave. Number 2, tried to concentrate over the sound of colleagues cleaning out their desks. Number 3, accommodated the request for access to classified data by big balls. Number 4, had a scotch. Number 5, researched countries I can relocate to. Another one said, drank it old-fashioned. Number 2, took a nap. Number 3, delighted coworkers with sarcasm. Number 4, dropped a tray of chocolate-covered pretzels in the conference room before the town hall. Number 5, put Black History Month stickers on bulletin board and gave out emotional support dumpster fires. And last but not least, number 1, executed low productivity tasking. Number 2, identified opportunities to transition to high productivity tasking. Number 3, developed a plan for Doge to F off. Number 4, all the Teams meetings. Number 5, responded to meaningless emails about task execution. The point being, other than it being hilarious, that this regime that we find ourselves living under is producing massive chaos and trauma in the lives of federal workers and in the country. Just look at this latest round of protests at Tesla dealerships, at town halls. America is resisting in large ways and small. The Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts has seen a 50% drop in ticket sales. Drag queens are showing up to protest outside. America is saying no to Elon Musk running us. We do not want him in charge, period. And Donald Trump, the guy who handed his biggest donor the keys to the whole federal government for him to do whatever he pleases with it, is underwater in every single poll, from Gallup to the Washington Post to CNN to Reuters, you name it. Other than his MAGA cult, nobody wants this chaos and confusion. And it also raises the question of what is the actual waste, fraud, and abuse that Elon and friends are finding? So far, their claim of finding $55 billion in savings is backed by exactly 0 facts. While they're threatening the future of Medicaid and food stamps for millions of Americans and even Social Security payments. While the only fraud seems to be Elon Musk, racking up new contracts with the federal government on the taxpayer dime while giving back 0 savings from his Starlink, Tesla, and SpaceX deals with the Defense Department and other agencies. Sorry, why does he get to make more money while you and your community get less? And the only abuse that we're seeing is against the very federal workers in all 50 states who are being bullied by the 19-year-old Doge kids and told to justify their jobs by a guy who spends all day literally tweeting and waving a chainsaw around while wearing sunglasses indoors. Is this the efficient government that you voted for? Really? Because it all really just looks, to my mind, like a mess. And we're probably looking at a government shutdown next month, since the completely incompetent Republican Party has no idea how to run the government. And what that tells you is that even when Republicans claim that Trump has a mandate or that he's doing what the American people voted for, they are lying. Nobody voted for this. This is a mess, and not even a normal mess. It's a fascistic mess. And what you can do about it is what you're already doing. Just say no. Tonight on our final readout, we are going to talk about what people are actually doing to resist this and get some advice from some of our favorite friends on what more we can do. And that conversation is next. Let's bring in my fabulous panel. Ruth Ben-Ghiat, history professor at New York University, MSNBC legal analyst and former federal prosecutor Paul Butler. Ben Rhodes, MSNBC political analyst and former deputy national security advisor to President Obama and former White House senior director and State Department senior advisor Nair Haq. Thank you all for being here. Let me get the folks who are not in the advantage of being able to hang out with us. I'm going to go to you first, Ruth. Give me an assessment from your expert point of view of the resistance that we're seeing in the country to all of the Doge, Elon Musk, Trump chaos.
Yeah, so as we know, we don't have a big generalized nonviolent mass protest, but we have righteous indignation breaking out spontaneously all over the nation. And Joy, I really believe that there's a reckoning that's going to come, because what's happening now at the hands of literally the world's richest man, who has taken control of our government and is using it to enrich himself and investigating. He's, destroying agencies that have been investigating his companies. This brings forth it brings to a peak all of the unfairness of neoliberalism, all of the kind of the rich get richer, and that's one part of authoritarianism. It's more, fewer rights for the many and way more liberties for the few. And so we're seeing a kind of indignation and anger that's erupting at local town halls, in front of GOP members of Congress and in their town halls. And so this is a very good sign of something larger that I believe will come.
Yeah, I mean, I think when people feel things taken away from them personally, right? When they're like, wait a minute, Elon Musk gets fat contracts and the community gets no more Medicaid, no more Head Start, no more food stamps. And also people who live in the community losing their jobs are like, wait a minute, why am I being unemployed so Elon can get richer? It makes no sense. And I think that is part of the resistance. It's not necessarily ideological. Ben Rose, I want to go to you on this because, Germany is in this moment too with us. We're not alone. Like one of the things that actually makes me feel better is to know that we're not going through this alone. This sort of crypto-fascist movement is moving all over the West. And for a lot of the same reasons, I think, as Ruth said, neoliberalism has not helped people. And so people turn to populists because they hate the economy the way it's working. Can you talk a little bit about Germany? Because Germany, the AfD party that Elon Musk touted, it got about 19% of the vote, but they didn't win. They won't be part of the governing coalition. Does that give you hope? And how do we sort of process the internationalization of this, I would say, sort of global apartheid movement?
No, I mean, Joy, this is something that I've been looking at for over a decade now, which is essentially you had a backlash around the world, not just in the West, but principally in the West, to globalization, to neoliberalism, to a system that was not working for working people. And there was a lot of anger at establishments. There was frustration with changes in people's lives and in communities, changes related to deindustrialization, changes related to immigration, too, in lots of countries. And that anger was captured by the right. You could have a populist of the left, a kind of economic backlash to that, or you could have a kind of identity politics of the right that could capture that. And what's happened over the last decade is in part because of real work, including coordination across borders. It's not a coincidence that Elon Musk was backing the AfD. You've had this ecosystem on the right that has built up over a decade and that has captured power in a lot of places. What's interesting about Germany, where you never like to see the far right get a foothold, and where we should be very mindful that the vice president of the United States of America flew to Germany on the eve of their election, refused to meet with the leader of that country, and endorsed the AfD, a party that has neo-Nazi roots in Germany, right? But what happened there is because they have a multi-party system, the AfD captured 20% of the vote, around a fifth of the vote. And that's not enough to get them over the hurdle into power. In this country, the Republican Party is basically the AfD. The Republican Party got captured by that far right core that was represented by Donald Trump. I think the good news is this has shocked people awake around the world. I was just in Germany. I was there in Munich when J.D. Vance gave that speech. People are awake to the danger of losing their countries to the far right. Thus far, governing elites, the people largely in the center, have not figured out what to do about that. But I think what we need to see in this country and in Germany is a kind of organic bottom-up resistance and a regeneration of institutions like the Democratic Party or like the Social Democrats in Germany. It's not going to be the party leaders in the establishment that figure out what comes next. It's going to have to be the rest of us. It's going to have to be civil society. It's going to have to be people out in communities. And you are beginning to see that even in this country manifesting around the country at town halls or in federal workers who are being laid off, or people who are just realizing that Donald Trump won on a populism that he does not intend to govern on.
Yeah, I mean, he clearly does not care about the price of groceries and the price of rent. He doesn't care about that. He cares about selling merch and hanging around billionaires and renaming bodies of water he has no right to rename. I mean, he doesn't care about any of the people that voted for him. I don't know what he has to do to make y'all see that, but he doesn't. Now, some of the things that Elon Musk is doing, and it is notable to me that the people leading this movement are largely South African, white South Africans, people who had a fascist government that they grew up under in South Africa, which was the apartheid government. And they are taking and exporting their politics here. Peter Thiel, Elon Musk. There's a bunch of them. There's like a little claque of them, and they have Donald Trump, right? And this but I want to talk to you about the destruction of the State Department and U.S. aid, and how, interestingly enough, it is radiating potential poverty into the American heartland, right? Because it turns out a lot of that aid goes to American farmers.
Not only does it go to American farmers, but it is it's the type of aid that has sustained America's industry and dominance in the world. And it's only been a penny on a dollar of the U.S. budget. Like, it is such a fraction of a penny if the U.S. budget was an entire dollar. Yet it says something that the world's richest man is targeting that, right? Humanitarian aid, things that support massive U.S. industries, helping humanitarian and poor people around the world. The richest man in the world wants to target that before he tackles the the bloated military budget that even Eisenhower warned us about. I mean, it just goes to this broader idea that many in this clique of South Africans, they believe in a CEO monarch. They think democracy is broken. The idea that people have power sharing agreements, people of all colors, shapes, and sizes, is completely against their own philosophy. I mean, these guys, these dudes, came up with privilege and daddy's money.
Yeah.
And it does not work for them in this society to see that other people have access or equal access to that. So they champion this idea of a CEO monarch. They have Donald Trump in there who's willing then to cede power. Yeah. And they have a Congress that has also ceded its power.
Yeah. Yeah. And let me bring you in here, Paul, because what's happened now, can I just show this? An Idaho protester getting dragged out of a town hall. This is a Republican town hall. Can you all just see this? You're starting to see, and you and I did a lot of Black Lives Matter coverage. We've covered a lot of the way that Black people are treated. We're now seeing these this is not a Black people thing. You're seeing in all white audiences in places like Idaho, people being dragged from their seats, being treated brutally. You're seeing federal workers who've now had to sue because they get an insulting email saying, justify your job, or we're going to have to remove you, and a 19-year-old Senate. Can you talk about the sort of legal recourse and fight back?
Sure. So I became a lawyer inspired by heroes like Thurgood Marshall and Constance Baker Motley, who the last time there was a constitutional crisis when southern states just weren't going to follow Brown versus Board, they said you have to, and they made them. And so now we have judges who are stepping up. There are 20 different lawsuits already generated by Trump 2.0. A judge has told Trump that you cannot freeze money that Congress has allocated for foreign aid. So you got to release the money that was going to help save people's lives. The problem is the Trump administration has not responded. They're literally ignoring that order. There's going to be a court hearing this week where we'll see whether the constitutional crisis is happening right now.
Yeah, we're going to hold your thought. See, here, this is called a tease. We want to hear what you have to say, but we're going to have you say it after the break because we got to pay for this. Don't go anywhere. Ruth, Paul, Ben, and Nayyera are sticking with us, and Nayyera is actually going to finish her thought on the other side of the break. Back with me are Ruth Ben-Ghiat, Paul Butler, Ben Rhodes, and Nayyera Haq. Nayyera, finish your thought.
Well, here's what I'm concerned about right now, and I think people are waking up to this. This idea that we do all these lawsuits, and of course, it takes time to get through the system, but at the end of the day, Trump can just say, all right, make me do it. You and what army? And the courts do not have an enforcement mechanism other than trust in the institution, system of checks and balances. The Constitution, this whole idea of these three branches of government ceding power to each other, that is a norm. That does not have to be. And it seems like there's many people in the country who voted for Trump who are perfectly okay with that CEO monarch type. And so this is really where the opposition needs to get creative. Maybe like the governor of Maine, where she sat down and said, you know what? If you're going to insult me and you're going to try to deprive my citizens of my state of their rights, we're not going to send you federal tax dollars. States and people need to be reminded of the value of this federated system that we have. California is the breadbasket, feeds the entire country. What happens when they can't provide food anymore?
Right. And the other thing, and this is the question I asked you, Paul, and I'll just ask you on air. Could California say, if Elon Musk and not Congress decides how our money is spent, then California shan't be sending money anymore? Good luck, Louisiana, surviving without our money, because right now California supports Louisiana, Alabama, Tennessee. These southern Republican states are literally on the dole of California. They are a donor state. Can California or New York say we're not paying?
So they could try that. There'll probably be strong legal pushback. And then the question would be,
but what if they don't listen then?
Yeah, what if a judge orders them to do it and they don't do it? They follow Trump's move of saying, well, what you going to do? Do you have an army? So I think that could be a legal civil war that hopefully we can avoid.
Yeah.
Joy, I got good news about who can lead the resistance, though, because I was thinking about when the earlier movements that you talked about, the civil rights movement, Stonewall for LGBT rights, the people who led those movements were Black women, right? So we know the leaders were people like Thurgood Marshall, Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers. You wrote a whole book about the role of Myrlie and other Black women. And so when we look historically about how Black people have had to save this country's soul time and time again, Black women have been the leaders, and that's why your voice is so important.
Quickly say this, though, that, as a non-Black person at the table, people like me got to not rely on black women to do the work for them because they did their job.
Yeah.
They did their job this last election.
Let me get Ruth in here on this, because the black women are leading a movement right now against Target. Target is suffering economically because they're saying we're not going to shop there. If you're not going to do DEI, you don't need our DEI dollars. So goodbye. And so you are seeing these sort of micro resistance movements that are against specific companies and saying we're going to choose Costco instead. Does that work on a bigger scale? If it's individual attacks on individual corporate entities, can that metastasize, to Paul's point, into a bigger movement?
It can, and economic boycotts have been, they've been very effective at certain times and places. A very interesting one is still going on in Myanmar after the military coup. And the resistance that's developed, it's now developed into an armed resistance that's one of the most successful in the world. Many people expect the junta, the military junta, to fall if China doesn't help them. But at the very beginning, they started, and this was youth doing this, young people, they started an economic boycott, and they developed apps that told people in real time which businesses were colluding with the military junta, and it was incredibly effective. And these for this generation of resistors, this kind of invention just speeds across borders, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of innovation going on with economic boycotts via apps and things like that.
Yeah, and Ben, I mean, we saw Poland emerge from a sort of near autocrat, sort of semi-autocratic government. It took them 8 years, but I wonder if you see a country in the world that is similar enough to us that we could sort of see an archetype for how we might be able to extract ourselves from this mess.
Yes and no. I mean, there have been a variety of European countries like Poland and smaller ones too. Like, I have friends who've fought back autocracy in places like Slovenia that have kind of stared over the abyss of autocracy, kind of pulled back. What they did in those countries is they built big tent coalitions, right? So they said, look, from the left to the center, there's stuff we don't agree about, but essentially this is existential for our country. And so we're going to put ourselves under one big umbrella, and we're going to prioritize democracy. Frankly, that's kind of what failed for us in the last election. I think what we have to realize is that we're distinct from those countries and from a lot of countries around the world precisely because of what we've been talking about. Because we are so big and so diverse, we're multiracial, we're multi-ethnic, we're 50 states and a federated system. And so in some ways, that gives us more tools to fight back. But I think what's missing, Joy, is it can't just be an antiseptic democracy that's institutions. Right. It has to be something moral. It has to, the kind of thing that gets people in the streets, the kind of things that mobilize things like the civil rights movement, was a kind of moral cause. And I think we've lost that in our politics. We didn't have that in the last election. It's why, by the way, I appreciate Joy Reid's voice so much. It's because we need people that are willing to fight for things, even some things that aren't popular. It's not just about finding the best poll-tested language. It's about showing that you care about something and that you're willing to stand up for it and that you're willing to fight for it. And frankly, we have the perfect antagonist right now. Elon Musk, you're right, this kind of South African oligarch, and Donald Trump, this guy who's enriching himself while they loot the government in front of everybody's eyes. This is not a hard target in terms of an opposition that is clearly not on the side of most people in this country. I think what is needed is, yes, the tactics that we've been talking about, yes, the big coalitions we've been talking about, but they kind of return to a sense of who are we as a country? What do we stand for? What do we want our identity to be, not as just white Americans or other ethnicity groups, but what do we want to be as American? And I think that's been missing a bit over the last decade in terms of the people standing for democracy. These aren't just institutions of government. This is who we want to be as Americans. And I think the time is ripe for people to start to make an argument that is very different from Donald Trump's, but also different from the kind of antiseptic, almost academic defenses of democracy that we've been making in the Trump years.
That is so smart. And I mean, Paul, it's kind of similar to what you said. I mean, the reality is, when you say we have to fight for our democracy, nobody knows what that means. Most people do not know what that means. They don't sit around with a textbook figuring it out. But people, people understand? Elon Musk paying himself and the hood not getting any money.
Exactly right.
And that's what's happening. He's literally, people were angry that Ukraine was getting money that they translated in their mind to money that's not going to the hood. You know who's taking money from the hood? Elon Musk.
Exactly right.
It's a simple argument, and maybe somebody should make it.
That's right. And when you call Social Security, you have to wait 8 hours on the phone. When your check from IRS is late because they don't have enough workers. Who do you blame?
Look, don't blame H&R Block because H&R Block tried.
I need a government that's going to do things for me and
That's
not
right.
to me.
There you go. Amen. Ruth Ben-Ghiat, Paul Butler, Ben Rhodes, Naira Hawk. Brilliant panel. Thank you all very much. We'll be right back with more of the Reidout. I want to bring in my pals, Rachel Maddow, Nicole Wallace, and Lawrence O'Donnell. It's exactly like the specials, except I can't ask Maddow for cocktail tips when she's trying to write 8,000 words of copy. And I'm like, well, can't you just tell me one thing about the cocktails? No, I have to write this copy. Thank you all for being here. Let's talk about this because I wanted you guys to be here with me because you are my comrades in arms in covering this insane moment that we're in when it comes to what is happening in our country. I want to start with you, Rachel. I would love for you to give our audience just your take, your tips. What do you think people can be doing right now that's effective?
Well, first I want to say that I love you, Joy.
I love
and
you.
that I am bereft that the Reidout is ending. I just can't even, I sort of can't get beyond that. So I want to say that, but that is also part of what I think I have to say to the country about this moment, which is find people who you respect and trust and love and make common cause with them and help yourself by learning from them and help them by standing up for them. And I think we have tried to do that. And I think that in important ways we have failed, but I think it's still the right thing to try to do. And so whether that means, joining something locally or whether that means making some sort of more unofficial common cause with the people in your life who you respect and who you think are people you can depend on, I feel about you. You got to join forces. We can, none of us can do this alone, and being atomized and dislocated and picked off one by one is a strategy of the other side, and we need to stick together.
Indeed. And when you're hearing Rachel say that, know that no one fights for us harder in this company than Rachel Maddow. And when I tell you she is our fearless leader, we mean it. And she is our super friend. We love her so much. And let me go to my other, speaking of super friends, when y'all watch on the special, the person that says exactly what I was going to say, making me have to think of a whole different thing to say because she thinks she's like so brilliant, but I'm just literally so in awe of just your history, your ability, your political acumen. Nicole Wallace, my good sister, tell me what you, in your brilliant self, believe people can do.
Well, I'm going to break the rules the way Rachel broke the rules and tell you that I love you. That the happiest times I've had, not just at MSNBC, but ever being on television, have been sitting next to the two of you. No offense, Lawrence. We love having you there too.
We love Lawrence.
And that I think that I thought that things like that on TV couldn't be real, but that the friendships that have sustained me have been with both of you. And I am, it's like losing a limb, the thought of doing those nights without you. Your strength and your fearlessness is the answer to the question I think you're getting at with both of us. And I think that my reaction to the end of the Reidout and your departure is despair. And the only thing that chips away at that for me is that despair is the autocrat's tool. It's their most effective weapon. It costs nothing. It's easy to deploy. It's contagious. And then it puts in motion all the actions they want: hopelessness, isolation, exasperation, giving up. Yeah. And so the only reason I will not wallow in what I feel about you leaving is because I think that's what they want. And so I don't think there can be artificial joy and gaslighting about sort of breaking up the pro-democracy side. I think it has to be, I think we have to be real with ourselves and with each other. But I do think I'm so intrigued and I feel the stirrings in everything you've been covering tonight. The answer to this moment is not going to come from a perfect ad being cut by a brilliant ad maker and put on the air for the perfect candidate that comes out of a lab. It's just, that's not how we're going to save ourselves. And I think waiting for someone to save us is kind of how we got here. We have to save ourselves. We as a country have to decide that Elon Musk getting, I don't even know what the word is. He's already the richest richest person in the world, richer than the richest person, to ever exist. I don't even know what the goal is, but I think that turning this over to the country and saying, you may think this is what you wanted, but this is not who we are.
Yeah, indeed. And I think people are getting there. And Lawrence, I want to bring you in because, and again, I keep going back to the special because like literally it's like a little party. We're like a girl group, but we let one guy or two hang around. Hayes gets to hang around, but we love our Lawrence. Lawrence is literally the guy that we're all sitting there waiting. What in the world is Lawrence going to say? Because we're going to be like, that's it. We got it. We understand it. So do that for us now, Lawrence. Just solve all of these democracy problems for us now. 3, 2, 1, go.
Well, this is the greatest honor lineup I've ever been in. So let me just start with that. An honor to be in this lineup. And Joy, I'm going to skip the love stuff because we did that on Saturday.
It's true.
I put it in writing in that first text when I said I love you. Okay, so you have that. And writing's forever, so you have it.
Y'all don't realize we literally text and call each other. Like it's really wild. But anyway, please, Lawrence, please continue.
So I want to turn to this wonderful book by Joanne Reed, Medgar and Merlin. No, seriously, this is important, and it's to the answer of what we're talking about here, because right in the middle of it, on page 194, there is this. This is the decisive battleground for America. Now that really feels like something someone said 5 minutes ago, or any time in this year. That's 1964. That's a 24-year-old guy named Michael Schwerner, who is going to be murdered that year after he says that, because he has decided in 1964 that what he's going to do is leave the safety of his home in the North and go to Mississippi, the most dangerous place in America, and go down there as a civil rights worker trying to help people register to vote. That was his choice. There were other people who couldn't do that, people his age, who never leaving their neighborhoods or their towns in the North and elsewhere around the country, tried to fight the same fight, tried to do what they could do. There were people who decided that what they would do is vote, that they were on the side of the righteous, but all they could do is vote. But every one of those people made some kind of decision in the face of something that was hopeless. It looked hopeless in 1964. It looked in 1964 that if you think you're going to work to get black people the right to vote in Mississippi, you are going to be dead and no one's going to get the right to vote. And in the end, he won. He won in death. He won from the grave. And that choice is there for everybody all the time. And there's another thing that comes to mind, Joy, and I'll shut up, and that is Walter Lippmann, when he went to his 30th Harvard class anniversary, which I know is a distant thing for you. Your Harvard class, your 30th reunion isn't coming for a long time. But Lippmann said to his Harvard class in 1940, before the United States is into World War II, but World War II is underway, that they now had no choice. There was no choice. They couldn't take anything for granted. They had to join this fight against fascism. They had to join it because there was no way you could sit back and choose to do nothing. He didn't tell them what to do. He didn't say you should join the army or anything. He just said, you absolutely must now be committed with every bit of strength you have, again, against something that seemed hopeless. I mean, Germany was just raging across Europe then. Mm-hmm. It looks like there was going to be a winner, and it was going to be Hitler. And so these dark hours have demanded things of people that they have risen to in the past, and there's no reason why people can't find their own spot. Michael Schwerner didn't join a political campaign. He didn't need a leader to tell him what to do. He just did it. He just got on that bus and he went to Mississippi. He just did it, and everyone can just do it.
Yeah, amen. And Rachel, I mean, that is so powerful because, I like to steal good ideas and I give people credit for them, but you're the one who said history is here to help. I mean, it just actually is, and you and I are both obsessed with the 1920s and 30s. I'm very obsessed with them, but the 20s especially now because it feels very resonant to today. But I think part of
Terms and Conditions of a King Follows King, a young Arab-American man whose journey of self-discovery leads him through heartbreak, longing, and growth. After ending a promising but unsustainable relationship with Thomas, a man of status and high expectations, King finds himself grappling with loneliness and yearning for connection. His encounter with Malcolm, a charming but emotionally unavailable man, reveals the pitfalls of settling for less than what he deserves. Through it all, King's dreams, his growing independence, and his candid conversations with his confidant, Princess Ariel, guide him toward a powerful realization: self-worth cannot be compromised. Set against the backdrop of everyday struggles, budding careers, and the complexities of modern love, terms and conditions of a king is a story of resilience, introspection, and the courage to let go of what doesn't serve you. Ariel Williams weaves a tender and transformative narrative about learning to value oneself, even in moments of uncertainty, and believing in a future where true love and fulfillment are possible. For more, click Tree link in profile.
In a quaint village, Jamie, a young baker living in a mushroom-shaped house, is beloved for his delicious, mushroom-shaped cakes. Lucas, a skilled handyman known for helping the townspeople, frequently visits Jamie for treats and to lend a hand. When Jamie's baking supplies are delayed due to a supplier going out of business, he becomes distraught. Lucas comforts him, and in that moment, they realize their growing feelings for each other. As Lucas helps Jamie find a new supplier and supports him through his struggles, their bond deepens into love. Soon, the village comes to see them as a perfect pair, celebrating their sweet connection. To get your copy of The Baker and the Handyman's Sweet Connection, please visit lulubooks.com. This is an electronic book, so be sure to have an EPUB or PDF reader to enjoy this heartwarming story by Ariel Williams.
To view more ebooks, click Linktree in bio.